Hello and welcome to the Metal Pack Pod, brought to you by the Metal Packager, the essential resource for metal packaging professionals. The Metal Pack Pod is the only podcast dedicated to metal packaging. We'll regularly welcome an array of special guests to discuss the issues affecting the industry. My name is Alex Fordham, and joining me on episode 2 is Marcel Arsand, Director of Sustainability and Public Affairs at Beverage Packaging, EMEA. With experience in the waste management and food and drink sectors, Marcel has worked with organisations as diverse as Recoup, RAP, DS Smith and now Ball. He is responsible for the design, development and delivery of the strategy to position the company as a leading voice in the packaging debate. Focusing on driving the real circularity concept forward, he leads the industry on the company's roadmap towards higher recycling rates. I hope you enjoy the pod. So Marcel, just to get things started, I've got our regular slot, our quick-fire questions. So just in a sentence or two, if you can just give us our thoughts on the aforementioned. What would you say the biggest challenge for 2021 is as an industry?
I think we need to push to the concept of real circularity. This is going to be the challenge. We talk about circular economy. Let's put that in practice. Aim at high recycling rates and keeping high quality materials into the high level. Can to can should be the norm.
Will the trade show survive post-pandemic?
I do hope so. I've been to some nice events and webinars, even have to be done remotely. So I think, I'm really keen to see those shows coming back.
The old or new normal when it comes to working arrangements?
Oh, the new normal, for sure.
Your favourite industry personality?
It's not an industry personality, but I think it's a personality that we need to give credit to, which is David Attenborough. Like he made the whole conversation we have now mainstream, and I think that's been very important, and we need to acknowledge that.
Your favourite country visited?
Tough one, has to be Denmark.
That's an interesting one. Never been myself, so that's definitely on the bucket list. And just to end things off here, what would you say your favourite metal packaging product is ever?
Oh, it's the beverage can for sure.
Any type of beverage can?
No, really. I think we are celebrating 85th anniversary for the beverage can in 2020. So I think we cannot go past without acknowledging that. So happy birthday to the can.
Cheers to that. So Marcel, I was interested with your take just then about the regards to sort of old and new normal working conditions. As a jet setter yourself, and likewise me as well, we've spent a fair amount of time on planes in our time. So what's the reasoning behind the sort of the new normal?
I spent good 30-40% of my time traveling. So I think, a lot of that time necessarily was not best used. I can try to do my best to answer emails, but it's not as productive as, what we're doing now. Of course, I don't want to be working from home the rest of my life, but it's finding that balance and ensuring that we can do more, not necessarily having to be face-to-face or going to other places, flying long distance. Online meetings became a norm, even events you mentioned about like trade shows. Well, I've been part of very nice webinars, all done remotely. So it's finding the right balance. I think we can use good things from both elements.
From a company perspective, how has your role changed during that period?
Yeah, that was huge. For being in public affairs, of course we expect to be with public. So doing public affairs remotely, it was difficult, was different. But consider that everybody was in the same boat. We have to adapt quickly, and everybody did. So all those meetings that we meant to be face to face, we just managed to do online. A lot of events happen. So, and we kind of could be, I think, even more productive than we were before. Not spending so much time commuting and traveling or airport lounges. What did change, I think, on the negative side, a lot of things that we did was with public engagement, events, music festivals, the Every Can Counts campaign all across Europe. That didn't happen, So even those programs had to be adapted to online social media activities. So that was quite impactant to those deliverables, but it's about adapting to the new norm.
Would you say with regards to sort of 2021, are there bits of how the company has adapted that you're going to be taking forward into sort of the new normal? I hate the term, so apologies to everyone for we're going to mention it certainly in the next few weeks. We're going to mention that term quite a bit. It's one of those things that's unavoidable. But is there anything that perhaps with regards to Every Can Counts or Ball in particular that we're going to take moving forward?
Yeah, I think this, being able to be more reactive and adaptive to the change. I think we've seen really good results from these, campaigns from the Every Can Counts activations from the social media. So it's all be more creative, like, so you have this structure, you took it how to do things and you know how to do that, suddenly you can't, so it kind of pushes us to be more creative, to have similar level engagement, deliverables. Consumers are still talking about sustainability, regardless of being at music festival, drinking and enjoying a rock band, or being at home drinking because the pubs are closed. So those conversations are still happening. So it's important to keep that message either way.
That's an interesting one, actually, because you mentioned about how consumers are still sustainably minded. I mean, I've potentially got a different take on this. I mean, we've seen in the past few months, I mean, it's quite disheartening, certainly where I live in the southeast of England, that you can, if you go for a walk or go to a park, you're going to see a discarded face mask, single-use face mask on the floor. Has things changed? Has the pandemic changed the narrative? Are people going to be less sustainably minded? It's more about convenience and looking after themselves. I mean, what's your take on things?
I think people are very worried about the virus. It's very new. It's still very new. We still talk about having a vaccine now. So, before what used to be a bottle liter or a can liter on the floor, I'll pick it up and take to the next bin. People are a little bit more conscious about picking things on the floor that they didn't touch before. So I think this is what's happening a lot as well. So it's not just it's like the actions that other people were taking before, they are not doing just because they feel worried about that. So that's that level, but I think that's a bit of an exemption rather than the norm, I hope. At the same time, people are at home, they drink at home, pubs are closed. The recycling rates are increasing for every single packaging format. We're going to see our aluminum cans, beverage cans with the highest recycling rates ever. So people are still finding their way. So you still have those black sheep that it's going to be very difficult to get the mindset change. But I think the conversation is still very there.
Oh, that's quite heartening to hear then. So that it's not. It may just be a case of in the past few months that maybe it's just subconsciously we're seeing more discarded materials because we're in the environment more. Everyone's doing more with regards to going for walks, cycling, enjoying the environment that we're in. So the fact that, like myself, I'm noticing these things is maybe that's changing the narrative because we are being more sustainably conscious ourselves. So almost we're turning things around 360. So no, that is interesting. I mean, moving to things on site. I mean, we do talk about sustainability and recycling rates, and what you've just said there is really interesting about hitting quota targets in Q3. For consumers, I mean, you're public facing, so you've got a good handle on this. Would you say that the narrative is going to change towards consumers being more bothered about emissions, carbon footprint, as opposed to sustainability and recycling?
I think it has to be side by side. One is not exclusive to the other one. I think they come complementary. The narrative, the targets are all based on carbon, is about emissions. So they have to be side by side. What we cannot be like fall for those greenwashing information, So, I think it's all about transparency. So carbon is important, recycled content is important, recycling rate is important. It's pointless for a packaging to have 100% recycled content if the recycling rate for the packaging is 20-30%. We're never going to go back as that same packaging, if you don't have the infrastructure. So they are all part of the same narrative. So having a transparent way of communicating this to consumers, so consumers understand that via the latest life cycle assessment methodologies, and providing those level of information, they can make conscious decisions about what is a sustainable packaging. It's a very broad topic to talk about sustainability without going into those specific details. So it's giving the consumers the information, giving them the choice, and they'll have the power to make those decisions.
Do you think consumers are well informed these days then, that we have to trust them? Because sometimes the argument is with marketing message that we have to be very strong to almost reinforce the mission. I mean, you're even looking on metal packaging products when we have the metal recycles forever motive and things like that we're almost trying to ram that message down people's throats. But do you have a slightly different take that consumers, particularly millennials, that they are well engaged, well informed, so it's more about trying to come up with imaginative things to say rather than maybe just saying that metal is infinitely recyclable? Is that maybe not enough now? We need to think of different ways of doing things.
So it's up to us, the packaging manufacturer, our customers, to provide information they need. Not every consumer will be a life cycle assessment expert and understand when they pick up. So they will be reading the labels, they will read the message and trusting or not those messages. So, you mentioned the metal recycled forever. That's, one that's been it's live for a few years. It's not very well adopted, but every consumer test that we did, the response was very positive. So even, have you seen this before? No. What do you think? Was I always positive about reinforcing, reassuring, understanding that metal can be recycled forever? It doesn't lose quality. Consumers don't know that. So it's a fact, even though it's kind of very, kind of basic information. So it's very important to reinforce those basics. We cannot just assume people understand that.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with Robert Fell, I'm sure you know, who's CEO of MPMA in the UK, and the subject of whether we're sort of still preaching to the converted, where we're very insular in our approach. Would you agree with that? Or perhaps I have been impressed with Every Can Counts and their social media campaigns, and that they're very proactive with regards to treating with consumers. But the wider metal packaging industry, and you have a good handle of this with your position at Ball, do you think we're still not communicating with the right target consumers properly?
Yeah, I think it's perhaps the way the industry behaved in the past. We rely on our customers to claim the positive about the cans. And not necessarily all the customers will have the same interest into the cans as they have for other materials. There's been a lot of attack into one format, so the attention is being to that format to help defend that information. So what we need to do now is be more positive, proactive, and give our customers the information they need to give to the consumer. So let's say, providing life cycle assessments, for example, so they can say cans is part of our portfolio that will help us to reduce our carbon footprint or reach our carbon targets.
So Marcel, I just want to change tack, although we've covered it in a bit of detail already, but with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic, would you say that there is the argument that a pandemic or times of financial crisis often is a positive for the industry as a whole?
Well, it's hard to, when there's a pandemic at this level, we've had so many people getting really badly affected with, illness and losing family members, and business getting completely destroyed to find a positive angle is very hard. As I said, the good side for that, people stop going to pubs and they start drinking at home. So eventually cans became the pack of choice. So of course, for us was positive on that. But I think it's about bringing those new ideas, bringing taking the bad thing, like the lemon to a lemonade type of approach. For example, we are reaching highest recycling rates as ever because, we are not relying so much on the go as, for recycling as we did before, where the infrastructure is not there. So you recycle at home. Of course, you're being more careful. You are, paying attention more what you're doing, and the results are showing. So there are positive things that can be addressed. So I think it's all about finding the measure, but yes, it's a tough one. It's still way too recent to think about positives out of this situation.
Yeah, that probably came across as a little bit callous from me there. I mean, we've in the industry, we've known of guys, unfortunately, who've lost their life during this period. So it's undoubtedly it's been a tough time for us all. I think it's just it's important to get across that point that perhaps during times of crisis, there is perhaps a business opportunity to get the message that metal containers are a very important source, and is definitely a positive for getting that sustainability message across. So that's interesting. You said about what you said about sort of consumption at home. Do you think once pubs and restaurants are back to fully function, hopefully that'll be soon, but who knows? Do you see that consumer change forever? Do you think that perhaps people are they're never going to go back to their old habits of maybe out socializing 2 or 3 times a week, or even in the industry, we're always at shows, it is a work hard, play hard industry. Do you think that people's mindsets will change forever as a result?
I do hope so. Otherwise it's kind of a lost opportunity. We had a chance to reset, but that was really bad way of resetting. But if we go back to the same bad habits, I think we lost the opportunity to be better. We've seen cities with cleaner air, lower pollution. So that has to be a good thing, So maybe that's a good way to use this as a catalyst to improve the introduction of electric cars, and let's think about more those a healthy life, so for sure. But eventually people are going to go back to their same old habits. Hopefully they will carry on good habits at the same time. For example, for me, I'm spending way less time shopping. Finding that's very constructive because I have more time in my hands at the end of the week rather than doing small shoppings every 2 days, for example, just for those basics. So I do a really big shop, avoid going out, so it's something that I'm definitely going to carry over. Like online groceries happening and is increasing a lot more, so that's a good thing as well. So these things we need to keep bringing in terms of, adapting to this and how the industry is reacting to these changes.
No, that is interesting. I mean, there's something I just want to pick up on in our quick fire questions that you mentioned with regards to challenge for next year, particularly the circular economy concept. Can you just go into that in a bit more detail? Because I think that is an interesting point.
For sure. So, for example, I think at the moment we talk a lot about circular economy, but we are not doing that much. We have some organizations really pushing this for a long time, but we don't see those results. So I think we need to stop pedaling on those linear thinking, circularity, and really embrace the circular economy. So talk about real circularity. There's new methods of calculation of recycling rates. This is going to be a positive one because you start talking about your real recycling rates rather than collect for recycling. We're going to start challenging how LCAs are made because LCAs are not perfect and not fit for this real circularity argument. So there's a lot of potential to still push this to the next level. So this is what we want more, transparency, working with new latest methodologies and start promoting, high level recycling. It's going to be with a DRS or a reform on the EPR. It doesn't matter as long as we ensure the outcome is high recycling rates, low as possible yield losses, and ensure the materials stay in that loop as long as it's possible. And the metal is a perfect fit for that. Even though it's a single-use packaging in our case, it's very close to that perfect circle.
So you mentioned about DRS, so deposit return schemes. Would you say that is a challenge for metal packaging? Because looking at the scheme, particularly in the UK, Scotland, where really metal, in my view, just gets put into context with other packaging formats. Do you think that the challenges for the circular economy and metal packaging are tricky, that the European Union is still very much legislating as packaging, not metal packaging?
I don't go back to the deposit return scheme part of it. It's challenging because I think the industry has been very negative about it because from past experience, we don't have that many examples in Europe. One of the examples we're closer to UK in terms of population is Germany, and Germany is a good example of how not to do a DRS. The way it's not centralized, the way the retailers had ultimate say in what was included and excluded. And for the cans, which at that time was the highest market, got completely destroyed overnight. So we want a deposit return scheme. If this is the decision of the government, it has to be a well-designed one. So it can only be beneficial if you have the power to, think about a smart DRS, not necessarily the return to retail model that we have at the moment. As we just discussed, people shopping at home, shopping online. So you don't want to go back to a retailer that you didn't even go in the first place to buy your packaging. So this has to be taken into consideration. The infrastructure on the go is not existing in any deposit return scheme on the planet. You don't have how to return your packaging on the go. You rely on people that, with poor background, unprivileged, that we're going to go and scavenge those cans and take to the supermarket. So those infrastructure has to be taken into consideration if you want to design a good DRS system. So, if the ultimate goal is to achieve high recycling rates, has to be a good thing to embrace in a deposit if this is what that particular government wants to focus on.
How do you think we can improve the recycling rates further? I mean, do you think there is a glass ceiling where we talk about, particularly in Europe, about getting those sort of recycling rates for metal higher and higher and higher? Surely there's going to be a cutoff at some point where 100% is impossible, for instance? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100% is like a really kind of blue sky thinking. Like we hope to have that, but it's very hard. But even the best deposit return schemes don't achieve that. It's close to 99%, or they complement the data with something else. So ideally, yes, a DRS can deliver 90-95% easily, but you're still gonna have those packages that don't get recycled or things that are outside the scheme, imported and things like that. So it's important that we still have the infrastructure in recycling facilities. So if it doesn't go to that reverse vending machine or whatever container, recycling facility have the best design eddy current to store that. So the wide spec, like 2 meters wide rather than 1 meter or 1.5. potentially like ban on landfills. So ensuring if it's going to energy from waste, you have metal recovery. So Denmark, I mentioned to you, Denmark has been one of my favorites to visit because they have a really good bottom ash recovery system. So 96% of the metal that goes into a general waste gets recovered. And we're talking gold, silver, copper. We're not talking about just beverage cans. We are seeing gold coins being collected in such systems. So, this is the type of infrastructure we need to be talking about. Banning landfills, having IBA recovery from energy from waste, for example, as a good way of buffering and catching those extra cans that we don't get via future deposit, for example.
That does sound interesting. Certainly, for me in the UK, that sounds a long way off. I mean, is there individual countries, territories where are there simple steps that you can take heart from? You mentioned Denmark. Is there simple things that governments need to do to implement decisions to get that circular economy message out there and get those recycling rates up?
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, like UK has, like, for example, in Denmark, the key company with bottom ash recovery has a plant in UK as well, recently opened. So we are not far away from that. So we have this movement, like landfills becoming a very old-fashioned, very expensive. We are moving away from that. So energy from waste is becoming a substitute for this. So it's important that when we're doing this, we think about either recovering before incineration or after the incineration. Just make sure, the process just ensure that less oxidation on the packaging to ensure the quality is high. And these are lessons learned that we can, we are producing with Metal Packaging Europe, one of our associations, like a roadmap to achieve those high recycling rates. And this could be part of that. Deposit will play a strong role. The reform of EPI will play a strong role. But as a final, catchment, this type of technology will play, at least in the short, medium term, a really, really good opportunity to increase those recycling rates. Norway, it probably is considered the best deposit return scheme on the planet. And the data they produce is using also recovery from incinerator bottom ash to complement the data. So it's part of the national strategy.
No, absolutely. I just want to move things on a tad as well and focus on particularly Ball's innovation record and just your take on things. I mean, not just because you're a guest today, but I mean, Ball, I think, have been one of the most progressive in the industry with regards to sort of innovation messages. You're looking at the aluminium cup that's been successful in the US, especially. I mean, do you see the aluminium cup as penetrating into the European market as well?
It's one that we're keeping a close eye on. Like, it's being launched in the US for good reasons. Like the conversation there is different, and there was an opportunity for this. Consumers, especially at the stadium, they wanted an alternative. They don't want to use plastic cups or disposable plastic. The aluminum cup came as a very good alternative. So it's working really well. Potentially, if that's successful, we can bring this to Europe. It's something that we're keeping a close eye on. But it's more like about providing those alternatives. So for the cup is probably our first business to consumer product. So it's something that people buying, looking at our logo when you buy a soft drink, you don't know if it's our can or a competitor can, and we don't care about that. We just want to make sure that you understand the concept of the packaging. But for the cup, I think it could be a really groundbreaking situation. This partnership taking these real recycling opportunities at venues and ensuring the venues provide a sustainable offering for the customers going there. So cup can be a really good part of that, but if you supply your packaging in aluminum can, it's going to be as good as. It's about understanding the value of the packaging. So if you provide to your customers, if you use a single packaging that is high valuable, at the end of the day, you have your waste, your recycling waste, much more valuable than a mix of low quality product. So your waste management will appreciate that. So you can negotiate that better. So it's about all coming back to that real circularity approach. So you can do this in a much better in a controlled environment.
Is that a big company policy? I mean, I've seen that Ball are getting into sports sponsorship with Arsenal, for instance, and also in Colorado sponsoring the sports stadium there with naming rights. Is that a big company policy looking to try and resonate with consumers and go direct to the consumer with sponsorship?
Yeah, I think that the one in Colorado made sense because our headquarters, our international headquarters are in Colorado. So you have the opportunity to do this partnership with KSC. And so it's not sponsoring the team, is sponsoring the venue. But giving the consumers their kind of ultimate kind of experience of novelty packaging, understanding the message about the aluminum cans or aluminum cup and the metal and the recycling forever approach. It's definitely going to be something that we have a lot of opportunities to play in Europe as well. Either with Emirates or other stages. It's all about giving and say, if you want to be serious about circularity, if you want to be serious about providing something to your customers, this is a packaging, and this packaging can provide, a really interesting, it's not just about soft drinks, it's not about beers, there's so many other options, and it's keeping this conversation in a very interesting venue, using every can count activations, doing all those things in a more controlled environment can provide a nice experience to the sports fans.
Do you think that's the way things go? I mean, we've seen it with the Football League competition, Carabao sponsoring, and obviously they're very heavily involved with canned products. Do you think that is a key focus we'll see in the next few years, particularly if we're looking to grow the industry 3% year on year to 2025, as Mr. Hayes has said at Ball? Do you think it is going to be sponsoring maybe sports competitions, maybe even television advertisement, that sort of thing? Do you think that is the future now? Because you like Coca-Cola, you're advertising on television and media, and they're not going to promote the metal container. They're going to be promoting the brand. So do you think it's up to the can makers now to maybe take the lead and almost go straight to the consumer with their own advertising?
I think for the company made sense, because as I said, it was it's a product on its own rather than a packaging. So it made sense for us to to embrace that is our product, and using these opportunities with the sports venue made sense to engage with consumers. There was a need, and we have the product to supply that need. I think for example in UK, Premier League is talking about becoming plastic free. So how do you do that? How do you achieve that? So that's it. That could be a really good opportunity. So it's fulfilling the demand for something that is being generated somewhere else. We are not forcing that. It's just a question like we found a momentum where this product can for cans with all this anti-plastic sentiment, we didn't create that, but we have a product that can help fulfill those ultimate goals of brands wanting to be better, wanting to find alternatives. Our latest LCA Pro proved that cans have a very low carbon footprint, which a lot of people didn't even know about it. Even lower in some cases than PET or glass or any other beverage format. So it's all about communicating the message and being more transparent about it, and providing consumers the ultimate option to choose whatever beverage they want in whatever format they want, which at the moment, that's the problem. You don't have that option. If you want to buy water, if you have to buy water and you want to buy it, you're very limited in the options you have. So it's about, giving me the option, and I'll make my formal decision based on the information I have.
It's very exciting though. I mean, you mentioned water, and I went to a horse racing event, Cheltenham Festival back in March, just before the pandemic, and there was not the option for people there to buy bottled water. So you had to buy, the only option was can of water. So it is really exciting to see that actually the message is really getting across, and it's almost a lot of these events and organisations are taking the option out of the consumer's hands. So they're saying, no, you haven't got the option of buying plastic. So it's really exciting, that's for sure. And I mean, that's the way I want to sort of end things, really. I mean, moving forward into 2021 and beyond, what excites you for the industry moving ahead? Is there any particular product concept or message? What are you looking forward to?
I think as a product, Joyce, you mentioned water, and water was probably something that was explored in the last few years in terms of, provoking that market. There wasn't much option. It was very dominated by one format, and we can argue all day long that, like, should we be buying water in the first place, or should we be using? And there's a really good opportunity to have more refillable. We're seeing transport hubs having the option to, which is fantastic. But if you need to buy something, give me the option. And then, having water in cans make total sense. What we start transitioning now is like wine in cans. And I think that came, 2019, 2020 was very strong. One of our associations, the can makers, did a really nice virtual wine taste test with, a lot of wine experts, including Ollie Smith from BBC. And the result was very positive. They absolutely loved. And then again, it's all about giving you, the consumer, the choice to, if you're single or you prefer a single portion, you don't want to open a big bottle, you're going to go take it to a picnic. It's very lightweight. It protects your product. It's completely opaque, so light proof. And at the end of the day, you have a package that is fully recyclable and likely to, I think it's fair to say, like the most valuable packaging you can have in your household. So that's a good way of pushing this, So there's a lot of room for these alternatives, ready to drink cocktails that are coming very strong. Again, like if you can have wine in a bag box, well, why can't you have in a can? Like if you accept your in a bag, I think can has a much more nice feeling than that. So this is the key, keep provoking, keep bringing alternatives to the market, being transparent about the information. The Metal Recycles Forever has a really strong role to play. So we are, asking our customers to put the label because all the data we did, not just in K across Europe, was a very positive about reassuring the consumers they're buying the packaging, is a sustainable packaging, can be recycled. Consumers don't understand about the metal permanent qualities that doesn't get destroyed with recycling, which is a virtue for the metal industry anyway. It's all about being very open and transparent to customers and give them those choices when they want to make the purchase decision.
That's brilliant. Marcel, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Marcel, there. I thought it was a interesting conversation about the opportunities involved for metal packaging as we emerge from the pandemic. Do you agree that we need to better put the circular economy concepts into practice? I'll be interested to know your thoughts. Thank you for listening, and please be sure to like the pod and connect with us on social channels. For those that haven't yet subscribed, please visit metalpackager.com/subscribe. Thank you very much, and keep spreading the message, everybody.